This is an unpopular opinion, and if I had a million subscribers, I'm sure I'd get a lot of backlash. It's now January 2023, and YouTube has recently instituted a new policy that affects profanity on the videos that are shown on its channel. And it's affecting a lot of individuals and their income streams, because if a video that you put up on YouTube has a certain amount of profanity, it will be demonetized, meaning it won't be able to generate income for you by being offered to advertisers. So a lot of people are up in arms about it because they followed the YouTube rules in the past, included profanity, but did it in such a way that followed the rules. But now YouTube is going back in time and demonetizing videos that even followed the rules of profanity back then. And one of the rules was you couldn't have curse words in the first 30 seconds, but they would allow it to be, rampant throughout the rest of the video. But that first 30 seconds, I presume the time that an individual would more likely encounter it before they make a decision as to whether to watch the full video. So, and it would be friendly to advertisers. Keep in mind, the thing about this is what their YouTube is attempting to do is to make the videos and make their channel more advertiser friendly. They want to encourage as many advertisers as possible to advertise it on as many YouTube channels and videos as possible. So the more family friendly the YouTube videos are, the more likely an advertiser will advertise on it. It also includes certain vulgarity, certain images that YouTube deems are not advertiser friendly. Now, my opinion is that I'm all for it. As you may know, if you follow some of my other channels, you'll see I did a grammar police rant on my the Real Passionpreneur channel, in which I went on a soapbox about how you can't watch certain videos without the F words and other vulgarity and lewdness assaulting your senses. And that's something personally that I, as I said, find offensive. And I've stopped watching certain videos, asked YouTube to block certain channels and not recommend certain channels, because the minute I hear certain cursing, it just grates against my system, sort of like the way fingernails on a chalkboard would grate. It's just something that I don't want to subject my mind to. So I simply, block and stop watching certain channels that have rampant profanity. So anyway, so my view is that I support the ban, and I am sympathetic to those people who are losing money. So let me start by giving a few disclaimers. Now, as a very small channel at this moment, none of my channels are monetized. So, people may discount my opinion because I'm not, losing money the way other channels are. Secondly, I'm not relying on monetization to support any employees. This is a passion project of mine. And again, I sympathize with people who have certain bills to pay that they've accumulated, and have families and employees who rely on the channel generating certain income. So yes, that is a bummer, and I do empathize with that. But on a larger note, there is something else that I'd like to have you consider in this whole drama. Okay, next item. People will, if you get in a debate with someone about the use of profanity, especially on YouTube, for example, they will come up with certain, what I call the usual arguments. And some of those I'll address right now. The first one is, it's an infringement on free speech. Stopping me from cursing on YouTube is an infringement on free speech. A lot of people have mistaken especially here in the US, that concept of free speech, even though it's a human right that has been recognized by the UN. Here in the United States, people have, in my opinion, assumed that that means that it's the wild, wild west and you can do anything you want. You can say anything you want without repercussions. And, one of the things that people are starting to realize now is, yes, you do have the right to free speech, but there are consequences to that. So, meaning you can say anything you want, and the government, can go after you, but there are consequences. There are people you'll offend. There are advertisers you'll turn off. There are people who simply won't do business with you. They're not obligated to interact with you simply because you are exercising your right to free speech. The concept, but more importantly, the concept of free speech does not apply to private entities and private companies. As it is written in the United States Constitution, for example, it limits the actions of government entities from punishing you for exercising your free speech. So you can say what you want about the president. You can say what you want about Congress, about the Supreme Court or whatever. But the government cannot punish you for that. So you have freedom of being punished by the government, but that right does not extend to private companies on private property. So, I have a dress code in my restaurant. You can express yourself anywhere you want to through your clothing outside of the restaurant, but once you come into my establishment, you need to wear a tie. You need to wear a suit, whatever the dress code is. So a lot of people mistake the fact, and they think that everyone is supposed to allow them the right to say anything they want. No, YouTube is a private company. They have rules. They have a dress code. They have an acting code, behavioral code, and they can enforce it. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can complain. You can launch a petition. But they're not obligated to allow you to say anything that you want on your channel. Another thing that people will say is it's adult content, implying that it's for adults, and they are basically saying that children should not be watching this. But the objection to profanity and lewdness is not one simply, those of us who make that argument are not saying we don't want our children to be exposed to that. It goes deeper than that, and I'll get to that in a second. Another of the usual arguments that people will say is, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Absolutely. If you don't like it, don't watch it. But again, there is still, if I don't watch it, there is still something happening on a larger scale that the profanity is contributing to. And again, I'm going to get to that. A lot of people also believe, due to some study that came out years ago, I think I have a link to it, I'll put in the description, that cursing is a sign of intelligence. So a lot of people lately in this new generation have embraced cursing and actually believe and are proud of it and are, expressing themselves through profanity and curse words because they somehow believe that it's not only their right, but somehow it's an expression of how smart and how intelligent they are. I disagree. I remember listening to a discussion years ago that actually stated that people who curse are actually very angry people. Now, you may disagree with that, but there's always an underlying theme of anger, frustration that undergirds cursing and profanity. And you might find that to be true the more you analyze it. Another argument that people will say is YouTube Kids exists. Again, implying that there is a kids version of YouTube and there is an adult version of YouTube. And we should be, as adults, should be able to curse on the adult version, and there will be a separate environment for kids. But again, that's not the issue. The issue, just because you're an adult, here's my point, just because you're an adult doesn't mean that you have to be lewd. Lewdness, profanity, vulgarity is not synonymous with adult. Somehow it's saying that you can't communicate effectively as an adult without cursing, and that's just insane. So, all right. So now here's why I support it. I believe, and again, people are going to consider me, a nerd or a Luddite or of a prehistoric generation. But if you've ever watched the movie by Mike Judge, there's a movie called Idiocracy, and in the movie, we are like 500 years into the future, and you realize that language has decayed, society has decayed, intelligence has decayed. People are speaking a mishmash of different languages and profanity and street speak and what have you. And for those of us who take a bigger picture, we realize that there was a time that you couldn't say certain things on the radio, certain times that you couldn't see things written in print, certain times there was a certain time that you couldn't see certain images and certain words and thoughts expressed in movies. And those of us who remember that time think it's a good thing, because there should be, and this is my opinion, there should be some reins, some boundaries on society. The concept of freedom and free to do what I wanted, free anything, is something that especially Americans embrace, but it's not necessarily a good thing. So society has survived for a certain while, for since the dawn of time, because in most every society there are certain agreed upon rules that keep the society functioning. Once you start to get a certain number of people living together in a certain environment, you have to have certain rules and guidelines and limitations. Where there are streets and people are driving on the street, and we all agree that when the light turns red, we stop. When the light turns green, we go. We don't drive on the other side of the street. And those are agreements, and those are limitations, and those restrictions keep society functioning in a particular way, and allow us to survive and allow us to grow as a society. As I said before, it's a symptom of underlying anger. It's toxic. Society needs certain guidelines and boundaries. And so the bigger issue here, in my opinion, is that YouTube is exporting primarily American culture and ways of being, because most of the producers are coming from America, I believe. I think I read that somewhere. That might be changing. But so what's considered normal in America, the vulgarity, what's condoned, what's encouraged, the vulgarity, the cursing, the lewdness, is being exported to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world doesn't share the same worldview, so to speak. So I personally believe that as a society, we would benefit from having certain guidelines and not having, this global channel be the cause or the catalyst of our continuing demise and deterioration as a society. All right. And again, it's a bigger picture, but whenever I see and hear the profanity, it bothers me, because I see it extending into the way children talk, into the way people talk, into the level of discourse in politics. I see it in simply the people are oblivious to the fact that their words have effect. I know there are some people, who may quote George Carlin at this point and say that, they're just words and the meanings are changeable, and we assign meanings to those words. Yes, absolutely we do. And those words have meaning in this society, even though there's a generation that doesn't recognize it. There are still some people on our planet who attach certain meanings to certain words. So you, as a younger person, may have the feeling that you should dress and speak anywhere you want to. But let's say if you want to get a job somewhere and in a corporate environment, you are still going to be subject to the perceptions and the judgments of the people who run those companies. So yes, you have the freedom to put tattoos all over your face and all over your body. But when you go in for a job, to work in a bank, that's going to affect your outcomes. So there are effects to the profanity and the cursing that go beyond monetization, that go beyond YouTube, and it extends into the larger society. And that's the thing that I personally am distressed by, the fact that I see, even news outlets and news reporters and newspapers are now putting profanity on their front pages. And it's something that never happened in the past. And I think, again, that it has an effect on it has a corrosive effect on society and a decay in society in general. So anyway, so that's why I support it. And that's just my view. I'd love to know what you think about the YouTube's profanity, tightening profanity guidelines. And I'll talk to you and here's the how it affects being vegan. Now, as a vegan, I, as you know, am very vigilant about what I put into my body. And quite simply, being exposed to the profanity on those channels is, I perceive that as something that I'm allowing into my being. Coming in through my ears, through my eyes, the profanity and the vulgarity is something that just like the toxins and the pesticides and the steroids and the flavorings and the colorings that I refuse to allow into my body, the same way I refuse to allow certain thoughts and words and energy into my system. I stay away from certain people who exude a certain type of energy. I stay away from certain content that is constantly assaulting me with profanity. I simply can't watch it. I turn it off. So as someone, this is more than being vegan. This is the vegan plus side of it. As someone who is vigilant about what I allow into my system, profanity is one of those things that I also don't allow. And that's my rant for today, and I'll see you in the next video.
Ask a Vegan. Answers for life.